How did you get started, Ryan, as in Spanish teacher? Talk me through it.
Well, it happened a long time ago. Picked up Spanish as a second major when I was in college. Ironically, I started up as a minor, and I was actually talked into picking it up as a second major when I was in school. Now, when I was in school, I had no intentions of teaching at all. I wanted to be a translator or interpreter for federal government or for international companies. It's never too late for an opportunity like that. I kind of just fell into teaching sort of as a backup plan, as a last resort, and didn't think I was going to, be in education in some capacity for a long period of time. I started off teaching in a private school and did that for a couple of years, and I went on to another private school when I was here in South Carolina. Not for a while, moved to North Carolina, and I started teaching English as a second language. That's when I was doing English. I did ESL, is what they call it in North Carolina. I did that for quite some time and then relocated back to my home state here in South Carolina. And for about 5.5, almost 6 years, I worked in a school where they have a language immersion program where in the classroom we exclusively have to speak Spanish to the kids. We teach math and science in Spanish in the targeted language. So I did that for about 5.5 years. And as of right now, I'm not working in the classroom in the school system, but I still, stay active in education by, offering tutorial sessions in Spanish for middle and high school students. And I also do, private lessons to adults.
Wow, that is a wonderful journey. That's amazing to hear about how you have wanted to get an interpreter and then just jump into as a Spanish and English teacher. And tell me, Ryan, what are some warm-ups or introductions that you utilize in your classes?
When I taught in the classroom, of course, we would start off during the day, and this was like with elementary students. We would start off with a song on YouTube over a smart board in the classroom, just to kind of get the kids up and moving about and getting them excited about the new day. When I worked in the language immersion school, I primarily worked with kindergarten for a couple of years, and I did first graders for a few years. So you're talking about basically 5, 6, 7-year olds. So yeah, so that was kind of our way of warm up activity for them each day.
Those kids, they're pretty energetic, and so you have to have incorporate those fun warm-up. What's one thing you wish you had known when you began your teaching career?
I guess if I had known for sure that I was going to be in education for a while, maybe I could have taken some refresher courses to help me with better lesson planning or classroom management. I think I did pretty well with the knowledge that I had since I had a degree in Spanish and I could speak the language to the kids.
Speaks fluent Spanish. Spanish could be a bit hard.
Find it difficult, but I guess I was the so-called language nerd because I took 3 years of it in high school, even though I
Wow.
only needed 2 years of a foreign language to go on to college. I was recommended to take a Spanish 3 class my senior year in high school.
Learning languages could be complex, but like you said, you picked it up immediately. What's some cultural norms that you encounter when you're teaching your students?
I guess I would say when I taught English as a second language, you definitely had to learn the culture of the students that were coming into your classroom to learn English because you had students from various countries and various backgrounds, even though the clear cut majority of the students were from Spanish speaking countries, primarily Mexico. And so I guess you had to kind of learn their culture and be sensitive to their needs, especially if they're brand new to the school system in the United States as a whole, where they may or may have not had much of a formal education where they came from. So you had to be real sensitive about that.
Yeah, most definitely. You have to definitely be aware of how you would interact with different students from different places in the world. Ryan, is it better to teach privately or at a school? What's your opinion?
I think I have enjoyed doing it more so privately, where it's a lot less stressful when you're dealing with one-on-one children or adults and student over here who's not doing his or her work. They're talking or playing and being disruptive while you're at another area of the classroom and you're trying to work one-on-one or in small group settings. But yeah, I think it's a lot less stressful doing tutoring one-on-one versus being in a classroom with all those personalities.
Everyone has their preferences about that. Yeah, it's great you're able to navigate in that different interactions. Is it necessary to have a side hustle or an additional source of income while teaching? What do you think?
I really think yes, absolutely. I think it's necessary to have multiple streams of income, especially people that work in the education field. It is very common nowadays to find teachers who have second jobs, whether they're tutoring like I am, or some of them may have jobs where they may be working in a restaurant or a department store because they don't make enough money to survive. And it's just so unfortunate. You got to have more than one job just to stay afloat, as opposed to just having one job you can go to work to and then leave it, come home, not have to worry about going to work another job in the afternoons, evenings, or even on the weekends.
I definitely agree. Being a teacher, especially, they pay so low. And so you have to supplement in that way. And so it's hard at times when you want to do a passion of teaching. I've been in that situation. And do you have a preference in teaching adults or children in your classes? If so, why?
I guess working with adults is easier because they are adults. You're not having to deal with behavior problems. You're dealing with grown men and women. Now, sometimes with kids, you might be fortunate to have a small group of kids that, for the most part, they're pretty good. You're not saying they're going to be perfect. That's never going to be the case. But if you have a pretty small decent group of kids, it's not as bad. It's not as stressful. It's not as dreadful. Get from one like, oh goodness, I got to deal with this little boy today. I'm gonna start wring his little neck.
Yeah, definitely understand. It's like you have to wear a lot of hats as a teacher, and
Hmm.
it does get a little tricky when you have to deal with kids opposed to adults, which are more motivated and more serious. Do you have a course, a language course that you're promoting or business?
The only thing I'm doing is I'm just promoting my business primarily on Facebook. I joined various Facebook business groups where I post about my offering Spanish lessons to adults, or I even offer tutoring to middle and high school students who might need extra help with homework or test preparation. And as far as offering Spanish lessons to adults, I mainly work with adults that are non beginners, those who've had Spanish courses before in high school and college and just want to take a refresher course. As of right now, I just find it easier to work with adults who have taken it before as opposed to somebody who's started from ground zero.
Understand that. That's so awesome. You have a course around teaching Spanish, and for those that could be interested, I've already had some knowledge base on that.
Mhm.
Have you faced any challenges while teaching, and what have you learned from them?
The challenge I face behavior problem. You have to deal with that particular student on a daily basis. Sometimes that could be a bit dreadful. And when you're constantly having to reach out to the parents by making phone calls or whatever, and you don't see improvement in the child's behavior, it just becomes frustrating because as a classroom teacher, your hands are pretty tied. You really can't do anything.
That's definitely heartbreaking sometimes, having to deal with such behavior problems whilst teaching, and could definitely put a damper. You have those great students in there that are eager and don't cause disruption, so that really motivates
Hmm.
you. And what is your favorite lesson in your classes to teach your students?
I guess whenever I taught, when I was working in the classroom, I definitely liked math, working with numbers. And I like when the light bulb comes on with kids that may not catch on as quickly as others. As far as solving word problems, we would actually do word problems in Spanish. And it could be where they got to figure out by reading it, okay, do you add or do you subtract? And then with working with the little ones called manipulatives in the classroom to help them to count, whether it be like blocks or cubes or little figures, whatever it is that to help them to count. We call them manipulative. So it definitely was a good thing when you had kids that who was struggling for a bit, and then next thing you know, that light bulb comes on. Oh, I get it now.
I love how when you're able to be that force and to bring like that light bulb in their head, like you said, for the students to like, they got it. They finally got it. So that's really awesome that you became that way for your students. Do you know any other languages besides Spanish?
I do not. I do not. If I had a choice to learn another language, I might would try Italian or French because those languages are similar to Spanish because they're Romance language family and they all actually originated from Latin.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you're right. They do have a
Mm.
correlation together, French and Italian. And so it might be a little bit easier to jump right into those. Where can people find you, Ryan?
You
Thank
could
you.
find me on LinkedIn. I haven't come up with a website or my own separate Facebook page aside from just my personal page. What I basically do, I post my services, the various Facebook groups that focus on businesses, and actually mostly group pages that focus on African American businesses where business owners can post about their services, particular pages.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us as the Teaching Online English podcast and just sharing your amazing profession as a language Spanish teacher. And so, yeah, we're so happy that you've came and we had a great conversation.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to get notifications of the next show. Talk with you soon.